This is Tim Tucker from worldwidedx.com. We're looking at the new Retevis RT97L GMRS repeater, and I've paired it up with the Ailunce, also from Retevis, HA1G GMRS radio. Now the radio we reviewed earlier last year when it came out. It's a neat little 10-watt GMRS radio. But today what I want to do is I want to focus on how, as a system, these units can work together, and is really a nice setup for emergency communications, for your farm, for your duck club or hunting club, or your RV in a camping scenario. I want to do some real life testing with this. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Okay, Tim is reviewing another product from Retevis, but as long as they keep sending them to me to provide feedback, evaluate them, and give them honest opinion about what I think, I'm willing to do the same thing for all my viewers and give them an honest assessment of these products, how to use them, what I think of them, and we'll go from there. This little repeater in a box comes with, obviously, the unit itself. It comes both with this AC power adapter, plugs into the side here. It also comes with this DC power adapter with a cigarette lighter plug on the end of it. I'm going to show you the power output, powering it both ways. There is some differences, but before we do that, talk a little bit about some of the features, how to set this repeater up. So first of all, you just plug it in using one of the options we showed before. The radio comes pre-configured with all of the GMRS standard repeater pairs programmed into them already, and you hold down the button and toggle between them. This radio also has a DB9 port on the side over here, where which it comes with a USB to DB9 cable for programming the repeater. That plug also outputs both the sound, has an input and output for the sound, for carrier detect, core, and so you can hook it up to third-party applications, do-it-yourself applications, things like that. They also have a mic, which you can use this as a base station. If you had the mic here or external speaker plugged in, wired up your own speaker for that, then the buttons here work as the volume. There is under the menu, you can scan. There's different functions you can set, things like that. This thing is pretty self-explanatory. Out of the box, this thing is ready to go as it is if you just want to use it without any additional features. Now, what I did is, using the programming software, I went into each of the different channels and I set up a combination of CTCSS and DCS codes for the different channels, and I programmed this radio the same way. So both the repeater and the radio come pre-programmed with the channels, but they have no tones or codes. If you want to create a little bit more privacy, so only users that you want to hear and want to get into your repeater can do so, then you want to set up the tones or codes to make it a little bit more difficult for unwanted users. You can even set up a combination of tones and codes on a specific channel. So you can set up a different code for transmit then receive, or a different tone than transmit then receive. You can even set a tone on one side, like a CTSS tone on one side, and a DCS code on the other side, and do the same thing in the radio, which will make it even more challenging for users to figure out how to get into your repeater. Just some different options you might want to know about if you want to add some privacy to your setup here. One of the kits that Retevis has comes with this GMRS antenna. It's not a very large antenna. I'll back up here a little bit so you can see. It's maybe 5 feet tall or so. It comes in two pieces. Unscrews here halfway, and you can see here you can just hook it up to a mast or something like that. This is really easy to put together. Basically, you attach these clamps first, and then you run the coax through, and the coax screws right there. I've got it attached to this little antenna mast mount. This is a pretty standard mount. You can get these at places like Home Depot or other places online. And this little short antenna TV mast here, this thing is about 6 feet to the feed point off the ground. In this case, I modified this for quick deployment. I added these little wing nuts on it, so it will make it real easy to put this up in a hurry. And then the kit comes with Coax. It comes with RG58 Coax, which is not a coax I would recommend using at UHF frequencies. We'll talk about that a little bit later. The choice of coax makes a big difference in the power loss, or I should say the power that's actually delivered to the antenna. So you want to use the right coax. In this example here, I'm using LMR 400, which is a very good coax to use at these frequency ranges with very little loss at relatively short distances, and even longer distances. It's a good choice. We've got a solar panel here hooked up, providing power to the power station. This is a 130 watt panel. It's what I have. This is a little overkill for what we're doing today. And you can see the whole thing is hooked up to this Ecoflow little charging station / power station, where I've got both the AC power and the DC power hooked up, so we can switch back and forth and do some different tests. This is a completely standalone system. Great for emergency communications, great for the prepper type thing. You can see this thing is very small. It doesn't weigh very much. Pick it up, take it anywhere. The whole case is basically a heat sink to keep it from overheating. And with this type of situation I've got here, you can have emergency communication for all your friends and family in a heartbeat in no time. Once you've got this pre-programmed and set to go, you can literally plop this down, plug it in, screw in your coax, and this antenna goes together in minutes, and you're ready to go. And one thing I want to point out about putting this antenna together, these ground plane radials just screw in. It has a little nut, a little 8mm nut that you use to tighten it down. This was a little tough getting these in here, as the threads were brand new. I put a little oil on it to screw them in. You want to make sure and screw these all the way in. At these frequency ranges, small differences make for big changes in the effectiveness of the antenna. Can cause a mismatch or a high SWR condition with something as simple as not having the ground radials the right length. So if they're a little tight to get in, like mine were, put a little light machine oil on them, 3-in-1 oil, something, screw them in there, in and out a couple of times, and then it'll be fine, and then tighten them down, but get them all the way in. So I mentioned that I'm using LMR 400 cable. Since Retevis currently doesn't sell this cable, I have a bunch of this, but I decided I didn't have time to solder on the connector, so I just bought some off of Amazon. This is a company I found on Amazon called Cable Assemblies Now, that's on Amazon. And they sell real deal LMR 400, made in the USA at various lengths at reasonable prices. You can see it's got the heat shrink on it to keep it all sealed up from the weather with the crimp on ends, and it's ready to go. I don't remember what the price was. I'll put a link to the comments or in the description so people can see what it is. But that's what I bought, a short 25 length of this stuff to make it plug and play. Retevis advertises this RT97L repeater as a 25 watt repeater. So like I always do, I want to try to keep these companies honest. So I hooked it up to my trusty Bird 43P watt meter. I've got a slug in here that's good from 400 to 1000 megahertz. And this is a 50 watt slug. So we want to read the 50 watt scale on here as we do the test. Now, I mentioned earlier that there's a little bit of power difference when you use the AC plug versus the DC plug. So I'm going to actually show you that here, but let's actually do a quick test to see what the power output of this is using the AC adapter. So I've got my HA1G radio, and we're on what I programmed in as channel 16 for both. I'm going to key the repeater, let it deliver it to the antenna. Now, you're really supposed to do this in a dummy load, but I checked the SWR on this antenna. It's really low. It's just pre-tuned really well. And you can see this is right at 25 watts. So it does exactly as advertised using the AC adapter. Now, this repeater also has a low setting. I didn't set any of the channels to low. When you program these, you can say, do I want the channel to be high power or low power? At low power, it's supposed to do 5 watts. I probably believe it. I suppose I should probably test it and put it in the video, but I kind of don't care because I would only use this under high power scenarios and situations anyway. So let's change the power source over to just a plain DC source and see the difference. Now we're plugged into the cigarette lighter adapter on the Ecoflow power station, and this puts out just right about 12 volts to this repeater, which it'll work just fine at. But let's see what the power difference is again. So here, channel 16, same thing on the handheld. I'm gonna key it, and we're right at 15, 16, 7. I call it 17 watts. So a decent drop off from the AC power supply to the DC power supply. So that tells me that this power supply for the AC is providing more voltage. Let's see what it says here. Power supply output 15 volts. Okay, so this is providing 15 volts, which explains the power output difference. So something to understand when you're considering how you want to use this station. Now, I will say that if you are using something like a portable power station like this, powered by internal batteries, or even if you make your own using car batteries, LiFePO batteries, whatever, powered by solar, recharging by solar or something like that, using the AC switching power supply is going to consume more power from your power source. It will drain your batteries faster. Now, the upside of that is it obviously, as you can just see, delivers more power out to the antenna. If you would rather have a little bit less range and a little bit less power, but longer life, because you're not going to have the loss through the switching power supply, then I would recommend using the straight DC source. This will consume less energy from your power station and your batteries. But the choice is up to you, but you want to make an informed decision. I mentioned earlier that I didn't use the RG58 coax that came with the repeater. And the reason is because the loss at 400 megahertz with that coax can be significant. You can see from this chart here that the difference between RG58 and LMR 400 with a 25 watt repeater with just a 25-foot length is as much as 7 watts. And at 50 feet, it's even worse. It's a 10 watt difference. So the choice of coax is very important. So you're probably asking, you're a ham radio guy, why do you care about this GMRS stuff? Well, the answer is pretty simple. None of my family has a ham radio license. Most of my friends don't have a ham radio license. None of my neighbors have a ham radio license. And I wanted a way to be able to communicate when I go RVing, camping, where there's very limited to no communication cell service. And I also wanted to have a way where we could set up a basic communications grade capabilities for the neighborhood, for the area in a time of emergency. The GMRS license costs 35 bucks. You go on the FCC's website, you fill out your information, you pay the 35 bucks. In a couple days, they send you the license. It's good for 10 years for you and your family. You don't have to take any complicated tests, exams, anything like that. You just fill out the paperwork and you're good to go. Now, I live in the city of Monrovia here in California, in Southern California, right up against the mountains there. They're right up there. And earlier this year, the fires that devastated Southern California came very close to us. Over in Altadena, which is over that direction, where my mom lives, fire started over by her house, and it moved all the way across this area overnight, and we were evacuated. And then fortunately, the fire, or the wind, turned the other direction, went the other way, but it burned down all of Altadena. My mom's house was spared, fortunately. But we were without power for days, and my mom's area was without power and communications for weeks while they had to restore all of the electrical towers that burned down, all the cell towers that burned down. We had a few cell towers down over here as well, but wasn't as badly impacted as that area. So a setup like this, where you can plop it down, plug it into your power station. I'm using the Ecoflow stuff, but you could use whatever. A solar panel, and the antenna is supplied by Retevis or whoever you like, and a real basic way to get it up in the air. I don't even have this up in the air optimally. I just did this as just a kind of a test to see what I could do with it. Will provide you with communications when there are no other ways to provide communications. There's other companies out there talking about how great their emergency communications are. You know, Rapid Radios is one of them, how they use every cell phone tower possible so they can communicate all the way across the country. That's great, but I can tell you from firsthand experience, what do you do when the cell phone towers burn down? That happened here. You need real off-grid capability. So with that being said, let's go do a little test. I've taken the power meter back out of line, and I'm going to jump in the car, and I've got my wife in the house, and she's going to do a little test with us. I'm going to see what kind of range we can get with this setup, with this kind of dumb, just plop the antenna in the backyard type of situation, and let's see how useful this is and see how far we can get coverage. I could generate plot maps for the repeater to show you the extended range you can get of that versus doing it with just the handheld radio, but that's kind of technical and boring. So what I'm going to do is I've jumped in my Jeep here, and I have a family member in the house with the repeater that I showed you in the backyard, and I've got the Handheld HA1G, and we're going to drive away from the house. We're going to find where the edge of reliable communication is, just handheld to handheld, and then we're going to switch over the repeater and see if we can find out how much extended range we can get from that. Now, I'm intentionally going to choose a route that has a few hills in the way and things like that, and buildings, so we can make it a little bit more realistic. So here we go. Okay, I'm just a little over a mile away from the house, and we're going to do a quick test here. So I'm going to, again, we're simplex HA1G to HA1G on 10 watts. Okay, trying this radio to radio 10 watts, not going through the repeater. How does it sound?
It's scratchy.
It's scratchy, okay. All right, let's change it over to repeater channel 16, and let's go from there.
Okay.
So now that we're going through the repeater, it's much less staticky, it's clearer, not really any popcorn.
Yes, it's much clearer.
Okay, I'm going to drive a little farther down the road here and see how far we can get with this thing. In the first video I showed, I was a little over a mile away, but I was up against the hills, and there were hills in the way between us. And the farther I went, the more hills, and lost it pretty quickly, as you would expect in a hilly area. So I decided to drive south. The repeater is up this direction away from me, and it's up a little bit on the hill now, and I'm coming down. We're going to see how far away we can get down in a little bit more favorable terrain. And so we're back on the repeater here. All right, keying up the repeater again. How does it sound now on this one?
Sounds very clear.
And we just tried a few minutes ago simplex without going through the repeater, and you couldn't hear me at all, could you?
No, I didn't hear anything.
Okay, so we're right almost exactly 2 miles away. I'm down at the baseball field down on 2nd Street, so you know where that's at. I'm going to keep driving a little farther and see how far we get till we lose communications range. I'll catch you in a bit. All right, drove a little farther, decided to get out the vehicle this time. About 3 miles away, lots and lots of buildings in between us. Remember, the antenna is just in the backyard, not ideal, so let's see how this works. Okay, about 3 miles away, I'm down by the Arcadia Library. How's this working out?
You sound very clear.
Yeah, good copy on you too. Okay, I'm gonna keep going west towards Pasadena, maybe a little south, and see how far away I can get. Okay, I said I was gonna go towards Pasadena, but traffic stunk, as is typical in LA, so I decided to head south. So I'm now down by the El Monte Airport, about 6 miles away. So let's get into this repeater here. All right, I didn't go to Pasadena. I went south. I'm down in El Monte, next to the El Monte Airport by Santa Anita and the 10, about 6 miles away. How does it sound now?
Wow, you sound so clear. That's pretty far.
Hamming it up a little bit there. Okay, but yeah, no problem copying, right?
Oh, it's very clear.
All right, I'm gonna make a. Well, I'm gonna keep going a little farther south. See if I can find the fringe of the coverage of this thing. All right, talk to you in a few. I think I found the fringe of the little backyard repeater. I'm about 9 miles away through a bunch of the city down here at Rosemead and Whittier Narrows, the 60 freeway. So let's see here. All right, it jumped out. How does it sound? I jumped out of the car. Are you copying me? Now I'm about 8 miles away, just north of the 60 and Whittier Narrows. I was on the other side of Rosemead and Whittier Narrows, and it was tough getting in. So I came just a little bit farther north, maybe just on the other side, a few less things away. So let's try it now. All right, here I'm at Rosemead and the 60, just north of Whittier Narrows. How do you copy me?
Wow, you're so far away. It's so clear.
All right, well, it's on the fringe because a quarter mile down the street you were having trouble. So looks like we're right at the fringe in the city with the repeater down low like that.
It's so clear.
All right, I'm gonna head back up towards the house. So I drove back up towards the house here on the south side of the city, about 4¼ miles away. Still a lot of buildings and stuff in the way, but pretty good shot. We were just trying to talk simplex, point to point with the 2 radios, and it wasn't happening, so we're gonna try here on the repeater. All right, I'm here at Peck Road Park, right down Myrtle, about 4¼ miles away. You still in there?
Yes, you're loud.
Yeah, much better. Pretty good effective coverage for a little 10-foot antenna in the backyard.
Yes, you're very clear.
All right. So not a bad test for the day.